That sounds like a very pessimistic assessment.
No,
I mean,
well-
you're hoping that the amendment will be passed at the Synod in November.
Yes, I am, but which calls for respect. Am I pessimistic? I'm a hopeful person, actually. I'm pessimistic about this legislation. I think the legislation isn't good enough. I think the very fact that the only recourse people, or the final recourse people will have, is to judicial review, that is to the secular court, when the church gets to the point where it admits that the only way, the final recourse for dealing with dispute between a bishop and his parishes is the secular court, there must be something wrong. There must be something wrong. And more than that, and I do feel this very strongly, take a little parish with 40 people who don't believe that their view has been respected as time goes by. As many felt about the Act of Synod. It was patchy.
Yeah.
The only place they can go is judicial review. How can they afford it, realistically? And even if some patron comes to the rescue, I don't know, a rich Anglo-Catholic or a CBS or the Church Union or something, or the Forward in Faith pays for it, who pays for the bishop? The church commissioners. And if it goes to the secular court, surely the secular mindset will be brought to bear in the judgment, which might not necessarily mean a level playing field. You know, I mean, even with laws, they're interpreted culturally. So it just seems to me that the sort of admission that we need the secular court to deal with our problem reveals something, I think, very disappointing about the whole sort of process.
Yeah, something disappointing, but also something that we already know to be true. I mean, that trust and mutual respect is not there.
No, so this amendment puts in the word respect as the linchpin that makes it acceptable, when actually I'm not sure the respect and trust is there at the moment, for good reasons. I think the code of practice, it's not even written yet.
Yeah.
And while people say, well, it can't be legally until the legislation has been voted for, that's only because we decided that process. It's not a universal truth or universal law. It's the process we embarked on, which says that the code of practice is to happen and be wrangled over, even if you have some templates, after the legislation has been passed.
Yeah.
Now, when the thing was going around the diocese and conversations in synods, Bishop of Norwich very kindly asked me to be one of the people who went round and helped facilitate this in an impartial sort of way. And numbers of people in favour of the ordination of women as bishops, or couldn't see any reason why not, and thought it was the right thing to do, expressed deep disquiet about there not being a written code of practice in advance, so that everything was laid out in terms of the care of traditionalists. And a number of people said to me, and I don't think they are unusual, well, I'm going to vote for this because I believe in the ordination of women and it's going to delay it, but I'm not happy with this idea. There seems to be something unjust, that you're being asked to vote for something with safeguards which are a sign that these people are honoured and valued, without...
Right, yes, we're not going to...
You're sort of signing a blank cheque in a funny sort of way. Sure. It feels like signing a blank cheque. Yeah. And so then there's going to be the wrangling over the code of practice. And I think the changing of the word to respect, well, the church is fallen too. You know, we're a community on the way, as it were. We're a pilgrim people who sometimes get things right and get things wrong. And respect seems too vague to me. How will it be interpreted?
Okay, so there are a lot of uncertainties about how this will work in practice. I'm just wondering, sort of theologically, I'm in a sort of slightly odd position, I suppose, as a kind of, as it were, a liberal, a non-traditionalist on this issue. I fully support the ordination of women as bishops and priests and bishops, but I want provision for traditionalists, and it seems to me that provision must be provision that you are happy with. I don't see that it's right for me to dictate to you what you can live with. And I don't want a one-size-fits-all. To me, the beauty of Anglicanism is its holding together of sometimes uncomfortable poles, and the way it can, marry a certain sort of traditionalism with experimentation, dealing well with new cultural challenges and situations, different contexts. And it seems to me that the traditionalist position ought to be able to fit into that somehow, as the Anglican Church, in this country accommodates, extremes of lots of different sorts, many of which I don't feel particularly drawn to. But in fact, your bit of the church I always have felt very drawn to. So that's okay for me, because I've got a kind of liberal theology that supports it. But I wonder for you, surely a bishop is a bishop. How theologically, ecclesiologically, so your understanding of the church, can it be the case that one bishop's ministry is universally accepted and another's not? I want to just get the theology a bit.
Are you talking about either a woman is a bishop or she isn't?
Yes, and just in terms of your understanding of the church, how can it be the case that into the future the hierarchical ministry is not even and uniform, and everybody's sort of bought into it?
Well, the only justification for it is the continual notion that it might not be right to introduce the episcopate for women. In other words, you could only live with that anomaly and fracture or frailty, whatever because the Church Catholic has not done this, with whom you share the gift, and that it's worth persevering with, one might say, a branch within our own church that maintains the universal tradition as we wait upon the Lord. That would be the only justification for having that division, as it were, legislated for, if I can put it that way. It's in other words, that we're still in the process of reception.
Right. But you were talking earlier about the possibility of long-term, or as it were, permanent honouring of a traditionalist position. So it sounds as if reception might go on until the second coming.
Well, it might.
It might. Yeah.
It might.
But you want liberals to be able to look in the mirror and say, you might be wrong.
I do. Yes, I do.
And do you do that?
Yes, I do. Yeah, I do. I think you can look in the mirror and think you might be wrong, but not think you are. I mean, obviously, you
what difference does it make in the way you... Because you picked me up last time when I talked about, wanting to focus on spiritual things in my pilgrimage and not get involved with politics. But there is a lot of politics. There's lobbying. This film will go out and people will see it and draw their conclusions. I'll get it in the neck from liberal friends. People might not like what you've said, and you'll be, So we are having to function, on the political level in the church.
Yes, of course.
What difference does it make in terms of the way we conduct ourselves that we have that experience of thinking, actually, I don't have, unqualified access to the mind of Christ about this. I could be wrong. How does it, change the way we operate? Because I suppose because I'm in an anomalous position myself, I look around and I see lots of very hardened positions, and I think maybe I'm just being sentimental, but I would hope for a little, what Buddhists call softening of the eyes, a bit of fluidity, some more permeable boundaries, between our different.
But I think it's hugely important that you walk together, looking for Christ in one another as far as you can walk, and you assume the best in the other person. sounds a bit facile, but you assume the best intention in the other person. You hunt for the sameness in each other. I mean, it's interesting here because one of the things that, and in some ways some people see it as a sop, I suppose, but it's done with the best intention. Women priests share in the healing ministries here. In other words, when we have the ministry of laying on of hands, they're invited and welcome to share in that ministry. Now, I know that's not all that they would want, but it is, from my point of view in offering it, it's a sign of love and honouring. That's what I'm attempting for it to be, and also it lovingly challenges people who might not want to have anything to do with someone of a different view to see their humanity and to see Christ within them and to see the Lord working through them. Maybe I'm a bearer of small bond. I don't have any problem living with people with whom I disagree. I think it must be my family upbringing, actually. I'm lucky in that sense. You know, we're a chaotic household, 6 of us in a fairly small house, and we just learnt to share the same space, even with holding very different convictions. I
wonder if a part of the way you've sort of responded to these issues is being Australian and coming from a society that is famous for its frank speaking. One of the complaints I've heard from traditionalists a lot that I think does hit home rather is that actually the establishment, as it were, in the Church of England doesn't deal honestly with these issues. You know, what is said is not necessarily how things are. Do you think there's an element of that in your sort of frustration with the way this seems to be going?
Yes. Yes, I do. I think with that, one has to be careful about the words you use. I mean, the power of words to hurt and heal, we all know about, and we now live in a society which has actually sort of got a bit out of control with how it uses words. But telling the truth is important. Even telling the truth, even acknowledging that you may not have the whole truth, but speaking plainly. And I just think there's a sort of attempt to be kind.
Yes. Because we English are famed for hypocrisy.
Well, it wouldn't be for me to say that. What you can say it. I don't think it's so much hypocrisy. It's more, I think it's to do with the English self-image. You know, that you don't want to be thought of. I mean, I've talked to you before. I mean, this is a very sort of telling thing, and that I've mentioned to you before about this Zulu brother of mine who always preferred the straight talking of the Afrikaners during the apartheid era to those who were from English descent, because you knew where you were with the Afrikaners, who'd boot you up the backside and tell you to get out, while the English would take you to the back gate showing you the roses on the way. And I sort of feel, if I can be honest about it, that long term, and this is not everybody, nor do I think it's necessarily malevolent in most people, certainly, that the traditionalists are being taken to the back gate and being shown the roses on the way. That's what I feel, and I have to say, some of the bad behaviour, and there frankly has been very bad behaviour by people and by priests over quite a long period of years in their treatment of one another and of people with whom they disagree. And I'm not excusing it, but if you don't feel equally loved by your bishop, if you feel left, if you know because of your theological position you can't be moved or won't be offered an opportunity. After all, most priests are mendicant. In order to keep faithful, there are a few Benedictine types who end up ordained, who find renewal staying in the same place. But most of us, as you know, in order to be faithful, need the opportunity to move on every so often. Well, if you get the sense, because of your theological view, that there's no possibility of that, you begin to sort of shrivel up.
I've said